just when is this going to happen?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcia Gordon. I'm President and CEO of the Business Council of Westchester. This is a very exciting morning for all of us today. At this challenging time, I hope this debate finds you all well and healthy, and New York is moving forward. We're very excited about that. We want to especially thank our very supportive sponsors, Burke Rehabilitation Hospital, Empire City Casino by MGM Resorts, Levitt First Insurance, Greenberg Traurig, Thale Industries, and Verizon. And we want to also thank John Baltz, one of the BCW's governmental affairs partners, for his assistance in putting this morning's debate together. Congresswoman Nita Lowey has represented Westchester County since 1989. She has been a tireless public servant who the New York Times described as being a courageous member of Congress. Congresswoman Lowey was the first woman to chair the powerful House Appropriations Committee. The Congresswoman has been a good friend to the Business Council of Westchester and has built a very strong line of communication with the Westchester business community. Earlier this year, Congresswoman Lowey announced that she would not be seeking re-election in 2020, and next Tuesday, June 23rd, there will be a Democratic primary with 7 candidates looking to succeed the Congresswoman. The BCW felt it was important that we host a debate as part of our political leadership series with the 7 congressional candidates so that our members have the opportunity to hear firsthand on how each of the candidates stand on critical issues affecting Westchester County, New York State, and the rest of the country. We are thrilled that Tara Rosenblum, senior political and investigative reporter and anchor from News 12, will serve as the moderator for this morning's debate. Tara Rosenblum spent 14 years as an anchor and reporter with News 12 before kicking off the station's first investigative unit in 2017, named Turn to Tara. She also hosts the half-an-hour political talk show, Power and Politics. Since joining the news team in 2004, Tara has become the most award-winning television reporter in the state of New York. Her more than 200 industry awards include a 2017 National Edward R. Murrow Award, 31 Emmy wins, and 105 Emmy nominations, 6 of them for New York's top general assignment reporter. In 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018, 19, and 2020, she was the most Emmy-nominated TV reporter in the New York market, one of the years bringing home a record 8 wins, including top GA investigative and political reporter. Tara was a 2005 Walter Cronkite Political Fellow and spends much of her time producing, writing, and reporting News 12's political coverage. Tara has interviewed presidents, governors, and reported live from state and national political conventions. In early 2019, her interview with Hillary Clinton announcing that she wasn't running a 3rd time for president went viral across the globe. She was also invited as the only American television reporter to accompany New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on his summer solidarity trip to Israel. Tara, we thank you for joining us today. We will not see Tara's face, unfortunately, because she has a case of conjunctivitis, which is preventing her preventing us from seeing her. But Tara, get well soon. And I am now pleased to turn this over to you.
As they say, the show goes on, right, Marcia? Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
First time ever getting pink eye. It's a lot of fun. But on to the important news of the day. On behalf of my colleagues at News 12, I'm just so very honored to moderate this debate. 1 week from today, Westchester County voters will have the opportunity to exercise their right to vote in many primary elections. We'll be covering them all, but now more than ever, as we begin the process of re-emerging from COVID, we all feel it's critical that voters have as much information on where these candidates stand on the key issues. So today's debate allows the Westchester business community the opportunity to hear directly from the 7 candidates who are seeking to succeed Congresswoman Nita Lowey to represent the 17th, which includes parts of Westchester and all of Rockland. Now, it is, of course, important to note that the winner of next week's primary will face a Republican Party opponent in November. And yes, the Business Council of Westchester does intend to hold a general election debate at a date to be determined later this year, so stay tuned for that. But for now, it is my pleasure to introduce a powerhouse of our own here at the Business Council, John Ravitz, Executive Vice President, COO of the Council, to review the debate rules and format. John, take it away.
John, you are muted.
Yep, I'm unmuting myself. Good morning. Thank you all, Tara. Thanks so much for all of you joining us and for our candidates joining us today. Just to go over the rules and the format for this morning's debate. Last week, we held a Zoom conference call with representatives for all the candidates. We literally went through not only the rules and the format, but the order of speaking. And each candidate had their initial on a ping pong ball. The ping pong balls were put in a big bucket and we picked out the names. So you will see that there will be different orders for all of the questions and opening and closing statements as well. We do have some time frame issues that we want to make sure everyone understands. There will be an opening statement, and that opening statement will be for 45 seconds. Then there will be 6 questions that Tara will be asking the candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer that question. If during the time that a candidate is answering the question that was directed to them and they mention the name of another candidate, that candidate will then be called upon by Tara and will have 30 seconds to do a rebuttal. We will have 6 questions. We will have 12 lightning round questions, and then we will have closing statements. Because we are all living in a different world, if we were doing this as a live debate in person, we would have by Tara's desk, a device that would have a red light to speak and a green light to speak and a red light to stop. We're not going to have that here. I will have a time clock though for running time. You will not see it on your screen. The candidates all know that when they have 10 seconds left, I will say 10 seconds. And then when their time is up, I will say time. And if I have to remind them again, I will say time again. But we appreciate the candidates and their teams for all the work they did to help us set it up. And Tara, I'm going to turn it back over to you so we can begin the debate.
And John, briefly, we all appreciate your efforts. John has been working tirelessly with Amanda for the past several weeks to make this a reality, and we all appreciate that. But now it is my pleasure to introduce the candidates who will be participating in this morning's debate. Assemblyman David Buchwald, State Senator David Carlucci, Asha Castleberry Hernandez, Evelyn Farkas, Allison Fine, Mondaire Jones, and Adam Schleifer. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will now begin with our opening statements. Each candidate will have 45 seconds. And we will begin this morning with Mondaire Jones.
Good morning, everyone. I first want to thank the Business Council of Westchester for organizing this, and Tara, you for moderating this discussion. Unlike the people we're used to seeing in our politics, I don't come from money or from a political family. I grew up in Section 8 housing and on food stamps in the village of Spring Valley, and my young single mom still had to work multiple jobs just to put food on the table for us. With the help of an entire community, I was able to make it to Stanford University, work in the Obama administration at the Justice Department, vetting candidates for federal judgeships, and co-authoring a report on criminal justice reform at a time when it was not popular to be talking about. I attended Harvard Law School.
10 seconds.
then went to work at a law firm in Manhattan. More recently, have been litigating some of Westchester County's biggest cases, and now I'm running the fight for all the people in this great district.
Time.
Thank you, Mondaire. Let's hear now from David Buchwald.
Thank you, Tara. I've spent my career in public office working to solve problems by bringing people together. After graduating with a degree in physics, I went on to become an economics researcher and a tax attorney. It was that background in solving problems that led me into public service, first as a city councilman in White Plains, and then as a state assembly member. I believe it's my proven track record of success that's prepared me to hit the ground running in Congress. Recovering from COVID-19 will take a test of leadership. I've introduced a bill in the state legislature to give small businesses and nonprofits zero interest loans, but the reality is we need more help from the federal level. We need someone who will advocate for New York and the lower Hudson Valley. Today, you will hear my record of results as it stacks up against the other folks running. As your next member of Congress, I'll be ready from day one to take on the big problems facing our region and deliver. Thank you.
David Carlucci.
Good morning, everyone. Want to thank the Westchester Business Council, John, Marcia, Tara. Thank you for putting this together. I want to thank all the candidates for some wonderful debates we've had and looking forward to this debate this morning. I'm Senator David Carlucci. I've represented Westchester and Rockland in the New York State Senate. Now it's been 10 years. And the last legislative session, I was able to put more legislation on the governor's desk than any lawmaker in the state of New York. So I have the energy, the experience to hit the ground running where Congresswoman Nita Lowey is leaving off. The legislation that I've passed has run the gamut.
10 seconds.
Helping people with small businesses hire people with disabilities and veterans to receive a tax credit, helping survivors of domestic violence, and helping residents pay their property taxes. Thank you.
Now we'd like to hear from Allison Fine.
Good morning. Every healthy democracy requires a growing and robust middle class. We have had a collapse of the middle class over the last 30 years. In this crisis, Westchester County has led the nation in losing 25% of our private sector jobs. Jobs creation has to be our job number one, and it would be my top priority in Congress. We need to invest in R&D. We need to get capital out for entrepreneurs. We're going to have to be very creative and very innovative. I am the only candidate running who is a successful entrepreneur. I am one of the country's leading experts in how to use technology for good. And automation is coming very quickly. We have to get ready for it. We have to prepare our workforce and our education for it. And we have to be able to grow and innovate our way out of this crisis.
Mr. Adam Schleifer.
Thank you, Tara, John, and Marcia. I am so glad to be speaking with the Business Council and all of you today. I am the only candidate in this race with real experience getting real things done for real people in both New York government for Governor Cuomo and also for the federal government as the Assistant United States Attorney and federal prosecutor. I've worked in the private sector. I understand the tremendous power of innovation and prosperity that private sector can bring through all of the great work all of you do. And I understand the need also to protect the fairness of the private sector so that we can have a true prosperity. So prosperity and innovation are not antithetical to justice and equality. And I've had my career based on that idea that we can have prosperity and innovation married with justice and equality. And that's what I'm going to do for all of you. Thank you.
Evelyn Farkas, your opening remarks.
Great. Thank you. Am I unmuted? Okay. Thank you to our host. I'm Evelyn Farkas. I was appointed by President Obama and served as his Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine. I'm running because our district and our nation is in crisis, simultaneously experiencing multiple crises. We need an experienced hand to take the baton from Nita Lowey. I have that experience. I helped President Obama manage multiple crises in the White House Situation Room. I was executive director of the WMD Commission, which issued recommendations on pandemics. And for 7 years, I drafted legislation as a senior staffer on the Senate Armed Services Committee. I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I hope I can get your vote. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Business Institute and Tara. Again, my name is Asha Casper Hernandez, and we are reminded every day from going from a crisis after crisis that we need someone with leadership and experiences, and I am that person. I'm the only one in this race that has state, federal, and international experiences as far as working closely with the government. So I know what it looks like when policy works and when it doesn't work. I'm also the only candidate that's a professor as well, teaching foreign policy and national security. I'm the only one that's serving right now in the armed forces. I'm a major in the Army Reserves, as well as a veteran who served 30 months executing foreign policy and national security in Iraq, Iraq, Kuwait, and Jordan. And we need someone who is ready, who understands how government works. We have no time for someone on the job training, and I'm the person that definitely can provide extraordinary experience. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. We're now going to move on to the first formal question of our debate. A reminder, each candidate has 1 minute to answer our questions. Question number 1 is, the coronavirus pandemic is weakening considerably here in New York, but the economic fallout remains. According to the New York State Labor Department, Westchester's unemployment rate as of April 30th was at 14.1%, a dramatic spike from March when we saw the rate at 4%. Now, many economists, as you know, believe it will take years, not months, to make a full recovery. So the question is, what should the next piece of economic stimulus legislation look like, given these dire predictions? And we will begin with Adam Pfeiffer.
Yeah, we need to continue to put cash in real people's pockets. 80% of this country can't miss 3 paychecks, going totally destitute, and 70% of our economy is consumer driven. So on the one hand, we need to do what we've done already, but more so, cash in people's pockets. At the same time, we need to run stimulus through companies on the condition that they not use that money for buybacks or dividends, but instead commit to keeping their employees employed. Why? Because right now, a lot of people can't afford to be going out looking for COBRA or losing their healthcare coverage in this pandemic. So that's the 2-pronged approach we need. We need more stimulus, and we need bottom-up stimulus, and we need conditioned corporate stimulus to ensure people keep their jobs. And I also hope we can all root on the folks in this district, 6,000 of them working to cure the coronavirus right here in our district at Regeneron. I wish them every success.
10 seconds.
That's a key factor in getting us all out there and working and confident that we can move around and stimulate this economy.
Thank you, Mr. Schleifer. Asha Castleberry Hernandez, what do you feel the next piece of economic stimulus legislation should look like and feel like?
Well, I agree with Adam. I want to add on that we definitely need to make sure that we save our jobs here. And the way to do that is to reinvigorate the businesses. Small businesses have been left out, or they have been not receiving enough assistance. It's been entirely hard to apply for assistance. So we need to better streamline the process. I've spoke to so many small business owners in this district. When the first legislation came out, it didn't necessarily wasn't really too friendly as far as applying for more assistance. So we need to better streamline the process in order to be able to combat unemployment. And also we need to do a better job making sure that people who want to file for unemployment, it's a easier process too as well. Unfortunately, just like you mentioned before, the unemployment rate is extremely high, and the
10 seconds.
was overwhelming, and a lot of people could not apply. So we need to have a better process in place to make sure that people are able to apply for their benefits. Thank you.
Evelyn Farkas, please weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with much of what my colleagues just said. You know, we need to continue the stimulus funding so that regular American people, citizens of in our district, can make it through this crisis, so that local and state governments are fully funded. We need to also have the federal government continue to be engaged at the federal level in terms of addressing the corona pandemic. It is good that the federal government is providing funding to companies like Regeneron and other pharmaceutical companies. I hope that once they develop a cure, however, that the pricing can be negotiated by the federal government. That is really important. In addition to that, of course, we need, coming out of this, a real restructuring of our economy. We need tax reform. We need to remove the SALT tax deduction. We need to make sure that we put new tax brackets on $1 million, $5 million, and $10 million earners. And then we need to funnel the money to seeing the vision of a Green New Deal. Thank you.
More questions to come on the SALT taxes, so stay tuned on that. Let's hear now from Senator Carlucci.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with much of what my colleagues have said. However, we do need another round of PPP, but we have to learn from the mistakes. We have to have strict oversight to make sure that the neediest small businesses are getting the funding that they need. We also have to pay attention to Governor Cuomo and what he's been saying, that we need funding to go to state and local governments. If we don't, we will have a disaster on our hands, meaning our education will be slashed, our social safety nets will be slashed, unemployment insurance will be a disaster. So we need another round of funding to help make sure that we can have those social safety nets in place. We also, of course, have to repeal the SALT cap, and we have to have the Defense Production Act in place to make sure that we can deliver PPE and we can deliver important supplies where is needed. Look, we see cases rising in other parts of the country. So we need to be ready if it spikes up again, that we can act and don't have to totally close off our economy.
Mr. Jones.
We have to be prioritizing immediate cash assistance. This idea of a one-time $1,200 check for a subset of the American population is, as I have said before, a huge slap in the face for most Americans, and certainly for folks in Westchester and in Rockland counties, which this district encompasses. I support Representative Maxine Waters' bill, which would give $2,000 to every adult, $1,000 to every child, until we no longer need that to be true in this country. In the meantime, we also have to be making sure that we are insuring everybody. Okay, we live in a system where over 40 million people lost their health insurance over the course of 10 weeks. So I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race supporting Medicare for all. And we can at least be expanding Medicare and Medicaid eligibility as we pass this legislation in response to the coronavirus pandemic, because these people largely have lost their health insurance in the process.
10 seconds.
We lift the $10,000 cap on the SALT deduction, of course, and be providing rental assistance to small businesses and pass Pramila Jayapal's Paycheck Guarantee Act, which is headed in the PPP program.
Time.
And now we'll hear from Assemblyman Buchwald.
Well, I sincerely hope by the time any of us take office in January that the next stimulus bill has already been enacted. For now, I certainly support the House Democrats' HEROES Act, not least because it covers vital issues like testing and contact tracing, and also funding state and local governments as well as our school districts. We do need to make sure our stimulus is more focused on Main Street rather than Wall Street. It's part of why I think consideration should be given to significant investments in infrastructure at this time, so we can fund the economy both in the short term and for the long run. We need to make sure that we, when we have any vaccine or treatment, that it's sold at the lowest possible cost and it's able to be produced by any manufacturer in our country. That's going to be, I think, crucial to making sure it gets out widely and our economy can recover. And then, lastly, I will say we do need to remove the SALT deduction limitation. I think one of the other candidates, Ms. Farkas, said we should remove the SALT tax deduction. That's obviously a slip of the tongue, but details do matter when you're a Congress member.
We will finish this question with Allison Fine.
Thank you. In addition to talking about future stimulus, we need this stimulus to work the way it was supposed to work. $9 billion was supposed to go out to support social services and food banks. And to date, $250 million has gone out, just a fraction of that. In addition, the extra $600 in unemployment is set to run out in July, and that's unconscionable not to have support for people who we put out of work. In addition to providing continued support for people to live, we need to pivot to the next economy. We have got to move forward to the green economy. We've got to deregulate business startups so that people can start businesses more easily.
10 seconds.
And we've got to create innovation zones in communities so that people have a chance to create really innovative new ways of creating businesses.
Thank you, Allison, and many of your answers providing me a beautiful segue to question number 2. All of you believe that President Trump's tax plan has unfairly targeted New Yorkers, especially homeowners here in the Hudson Valley. How would you plan to fight back against the SALT tax if elected, especially given the fact right now there's not enough votes to overturn it? And we will begin with David Carlucci.
Yes, it's going to be a disaster in the long term for New York State if we keep this this policy in place. So we have to push and push and push. And look, I have the experience, like I said, of getting more legislation on the governor's desk than any lawmaker in the state of New York. I've worked across the aisle with Republicans to deliver important votes to make sure that we move forward, whether it was on gun safety or marriage equality or paid family leave. So I have that experience of bringing people together, whatever your ideology is, to focus on common sense solutions. So I'm going to use that experience to try to bring together a coalition of people that will agree that having the SALT cap is just a disaster for localities, for the state of New York, and we'll push to get that result done. Look, we could also say that we will cap it at $30,000 or $35,000, but we have to move in that direction to lift that cap.
Thank you. Let's hear now from Adam Schleifer.
Yeah, I support what the Democrats did by putting the removal of the cap on the SALT deduction in the HEROES Act. And I hope that that stays in and that that gets done before any of us has the opportunity to advocate and represent all of you. If it doesn't, I will do exactly what Congresswoman Lowy did, which is work in a bipartisan way. She had a bipartisan bill co-sponsored by Congressman King in Long Island. I think we should continue to work that way. And I think also we should repeal the entirety of the Trump tax plan, institute additional higher rates at 40 and 42% at $1 and $2 million at least. It's why economists have said that my plan is more progressive than even Joe Biden's plan, and have supported it. I would just point out very quickly that Mr. Carlucci said he worked across the aisle. It's important to work in a bipartisan way. But what's also important to do is when you run as a Democrat and you have the support of the Democratic Party, not to then go to Albany and literally join the Republican Party caucus, depriving Andrea Stewart Cousins and the Democrats of a majority in Albany. Let's work together, but not jump ship when it's convenient.
David Carlucci, before we move on to our next candidate, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond.
Well, it's easy to talk when you just arrive on the scene. I had to work because we had to get Republican votes to deliver marriage equality, the strongest gun control legislation in the nation, paid family leave, raise the minimum wage. Each and every one of those bills that is now law required Republican votes to do it. And look, I worked independently, working with Democrats, working with Republicans to get the job done. The issue is different now. Under the leadership of Stewart Cousins, I've worked to pass more legislation than any lawmaker in the state of New York. So I've shown I can work with Democrats, I can work with Republicans to deliver results.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Mondaire Jones. How would you fight back against Trump's tax plan?
Yeah, we have to start by repealing Trump's tax cuts in December of 2017. And of course, we have to make sure that we are fighting in the meantime to, at a minimum, lift this $10,000 cap on the SALT deduction, which crushed families in Rockland and in Westchester counties. As it is, we are already taxed more than we get back from the federal government. That is a catastrophe. And we need the kind of leadership that's able to reform the status quo. This is something where we can find common ground with Republicans, especially in places like New York and Connecticut and New Jersey and in California, highly taxed states where Republicans and Democrats alike want to see this SALT cap repealed. And so this is an area where we can get bipartisan agreement, I think. And of course, it starts with flipping the Senate from red to blue so that we can pass this thing in January of 2021.
Allison Fine, please weigh in.
So there's no question that the Trump weaponizing of the tax code was a dreadful thing to do, not only for the country, but of course for New York State. We need to repeal the 2017 tax bill and remove the limitations on the SALT deductions. However, as Democrats, I think we spend too much time talking about taxes and not enough time talking about how to create jobs. New businesses are the driver for jobs. 2/3 of new jobs come from new businesses. We have got to become a more entrepreneurial nation. We are at a 65-year low for the amount of R&D invested by the federal government. We have to pivot our education system to help kids become ready to be creative and be entrepreneurial. We have to strengthen our community banks to get capital out to kids and people of color who get less than 3% of venture capital right now. And we're going to have to reimagine our downtowns coming out of this crisis no longer look the way they did once.
David Buchwald, where do you stand?
Well, something to say, I appreciate Ms. Fine's answer because the prior answers all had either misinformation or caveats. I believe in removing the SALT deduction limitation in its entirety, not negotiating amongst ourselves here in Westchester and Rockland counties, the highest property tax counties, and saying we should only go up, the limit should only go up a little bit. I think it should be a full repeal. And I do give Congressman Lowy credit for having worked into the HEROES Act a 2-year removal of the limit. But rest assured, even if House Democrats are successful this year, we still will have that battle for the long-term future of our economy. I'm a practicing tax attorney before I entered the Assembly, so I know that it's important to send someone who's already been fighting against the SALT deduction limit, decoupling New York's tax code, making sure that we have lawsuits in place. I advise the lawyers to the Village of Scarsdale suing the IRS. It might not even take a vote of Congress to actually effectively remove this limitation. And I believe that we need someone in Congress who knows the details on this and many other important tax matters. Thank you.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Yes, I agree with State Assembly Member David Buckle as far as supporting the local lawsuits against this terrible assault situation. But I will tell you that, of course, I agree with most of my colleagues. We should repeal the SALT cap. And one way to do it is first we got to vote Mr. Trump out of office. And then second of all, then we got to also repeal and replace the Trump tax policy. And also, last but not least, you know, when we're looking at this situation, we need to really think about the bipartisanship that we really need in Washington. We know right now there's political instability in Washington. There's no time to play around as far as trying to go on one extreme or another. It is a very serious situation. I have done that at the United Nations, working with in a multilateral environment, working with so many key actors, and it's hard, it's tough. But we're going into an environment where it is hard to legislate due to the fact that it's extreme in many ways, and we have to have someone who has that bipartisanship experience that knows how to work with different people. Thank you.
Evelyn Farkas, lastly, let's hear your plan.
Well, obviously, as I said before, we need to remove the cap on the SALT deductions. I know how to do this in a bipartisan fashion because, as I said, for 7 years, I was a senior staffer on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Every year we passed a piece of legislation, a must-pass bill, these bills are called, and I worked across the aisles with colleagues to get things done on behalf of Democrats. I know how to do it. I can do it when it comes to taxes. You just find allies across the aisle. I can do it when it comes to Indian Point because we have aging nuclear facilities in red states and southern states. They will also need federal attention and federal funding. That's just another example. But obviously, we need to find allies across the aisle who are experiencing a similar problem, if not the identical problem. If we can't join with them on the actual issue, then you find other ways to compromise or ways to help them in ways that don't endanger your values and your interests. So I have the experience. I've already done it. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to question number 3. In addition to the pandemic and economic fallout, the other issue that has clearly dominated the news cycle throughout your campaign is the issue of racial injustice and inequality in America, prompted by the police killing of George Floyd. I'm curious, did any of you attend local rallies? At many of them, protesters called for the defunding and even disbanding of police departments across the nation. Just this morning, I was reading in detail an article about the NYPD disbanding its own anti-crime unit. So the question is, where do you stand? Do you feel our local police departments here at home need an overhaul? And if so, what form would it take? We're going to begin this question with Allison Fine.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, I have been to many of the protests, particularly here in the river towns. I have a 25-year track record working for social justice in communities across the country. And we have an opportunity for systemic change right now. Defund the police is what I would call an inelegant phrase for what is meant to be a realignment of priorities, where we can have, instead of police focused on imprisonment and surveillance and punishment, we can have a realignment of funding so that we're funding more in prevention, in addiction services, in helping people who are victims of domestic violence, in education. so that we become a country that is preventing crime from happening and focused on being really human-centered as a society and having our values match our policies in that way.
Time.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez, what are your thoughts here?
Thank you for the question. I've been to many protests and actually, rallies, excuse me, and actually was invited and, enjoyed every moment of talking about this issue, especially how it hits home for me. First and foremost, when we're talking about defunding the police, I must say that I think that it's a quick thing to say, but you got to really have a comprehensive approach on it. First, I think we need better rules of engagement when it comes to the police department or law enforcement in dealing with citizens. Like, what can we do to better engage with each other? How can we de-escalate situations? I think there needs to be more training in that. Also, we need more cultural awareness when it comes to law enforcement operating in a certain environment. I think that there's a lack of that at times. Also, we need more education, like Allison Fine said. We need a lot more of those DARE programs that I used to actually attend when I was a little girl in Terrytown. So while there's room for improvement as far as policy, and last but not least, we need definitely to support a national standard in the in government, making sure that we legislate a national standard as a way to better guide the local law enforcement. Thank you.
David Buchwald.
Yeah, I've been to numerous rallies here in the Lower Hudson Valley, and appropriately so, because we need to stamp out institutional racism in our country. When it comes to federal policy with regards to criminal justice, the focus has to be on reallocating resources. Instead of the federal government providing military apparatus and weapons to local law enforcement, we should be having the federal government require body cameras and fund body cameras and do things like fund anti-bias and de-escalation training, things that truly make a difference when it comes to accountability and responsibility within police departments. That's something that I've been pleased this past week to vote for in the state legislature, but has been a stalwart part of my history. Since 2014, I've been doing things like voting to against improvements in 50A. We just repealed 50A, the bill that restricts access to police information. So I hope that we make real progress on this as a country. Thank you.
Again, do local police departments here at home need an overhaul? Let's hear from Evan now.
So thank you for the question. I would say, first of all, that I have been to many rallies in Westchester and Rockland. 3 years ago, I penned a piece calling for a commission on the legacy of slavery and racism, a commission that multiple members of Congress have called for repeatedly over the years. It's long overdue. It's just a start. It will lay out for everyone what Black Americans have experienced throughout their lives and lay out recommendations for reform, which include police reform, which is urgently overdue and needs to happen even before the commission finishes its work. At the local level, we need to redefine roles and missions. We need to reform the police, not defund them necessarily, although reform will probably mean taking resources from police forces and putting them towards other things, as Asha mentioned, to prevent recidivism, to prevent, of course, overuse of force by the police. And at the national level, there are many things we need to do. The Department of Justice has to have oversight, has to be able to review and adjudicate police misconduct and violence. Thank you.
And what kind of reform do you feel is needed, Mr. Schleifer?
Sorry, Tara, can you repeat that?
Mr. Schleifer is next in line. Yep.
Thank you, Tara. We didn't hear you. So yes, we've joined, many of us have all joined together, and we've seen one another at rallies expressing righteous indignation and constructive anger at the unmet promises of our Constitution as they relate to African Americans and people of color. We need to do better. I have a career in law enforcement as a federal prosecutor, working with tremendously hardworking people who put their lives on the line, as Asha understands, trying to make our communities safer and more just. And I'm proud to say that my mentor and boss and hero at the U.S. Attorney's Office was Lawrence Middleton, who successfully won convictions against the officers who violated Mr. Rodney King's civil rights. I know what it takes. What we need to do right now is have the FBI and DOJ enforcing civil rights laws against officers who violate those. We need anti-bias training and de-escalation training, as Mr. Buchwald said, and we need to condition federal funding on that.
10 seconds.
And we also need to be looking at things like a database so that officers who do have misconduct can't go 2 towns or 2 states over. There's a role for better policing, and there's a way to make our rights realized in this country, and I'm the one with experience to know how to do that.
John Dare Jones.
Yeah, I have been fortunate to have been able to attend a number of rallies in Westchester and in Rockland counties on this issue. And I've been really encouraged to see people from all walks of life coming together. And it feels different from how it's been in the past when things like this have happened. I'm also proud to have been the candidate in this race talking about issues of criminal justice reform and policing reform and racial justice generally from the beginning. It's what I mean when I say I'm running for Congress, because for me, policy is personal. I've been focused on this issue since at least the age of 19 years old when I chaired a committee on the NAACP's National Board of Directors. We need national standards in policing, and yes, we can accomplish that through conditioning the receipt of federal funds by local law enforcement agencies. We need independent authorities to investigate and to prosecute police officers who engage in these unjustifiable killings. We also need to radically reimagine our so-called criminal justice system, and that does mean reducing funding for law enforcement agencies and reallocating those things towards youth employment, health services, social workers, things that are known to improve public safety without requiring the policing of Black and brown bodies.
David Carlucci, is it time for an overhaul?
We have to change the paradigm. And this is something that I've been working on before I entered the race for Congress. Look, I've supported the bail reform measures. I worked to raise the age of criminal responsibility. I chair the Mental Health Committee and have been the driver in making funding available for crisis intervention teams to de-escalate situations. But yes, we need to have a federal model for the legislation we've put in place here in New York. We have to ban the use of chokeholds. We have to have independent investigations of police misconduct. We have to have a better use of police cameras, body cameras across this nation. And we have to change the paradigm to divert people from the criminal justice system in the first place. In Westchester County alone, we have 40 different judicial jurisdictions. This year, legislation took effect that I passed that allows for diversion courts to proliferate in Westchester County and around the state to say, you don't have to just go to prison. We can divert you, we can get you help, we can get you treatment. That's what we need to be focused on.
Thank you, David Carlucci. We move on to question 4. Westchester's energy landscape will dramatically change once Indian Point closes its last reactor in December. As you know, the southern part of the county is still under a gas moratorium, and many businesses and new economic development projects have been affected by the lack of available natural gas. How confident are you that Westchester will have enough power in 2021? David Buchwald, we will begin with you.
As someone who doesn't believe that Indian Point should have been relicensed because it would never have been built at that location so close to the New York metropolitan area nowadays. I think we do have to prepare for the Indian Point's full decommissioning. We're already halfway there. But I also recognize that consistent with the Green New Deal and New York's Community Leadership and Climate Protection Act, which I was a co-sponsor of, where we've set goals for removing reliance on fossil fuels for 2030, 2040, and 2050, we do have to recognize that there is a real economic need in Westchester County under the Con Ed gas moratorium for some flexibility. And I was the only candidate in a debate earlier this year to not unilaterally oppose every piece of fossil fuel infrastructure, because I know that if we can, through the Tennessee Gas Pipeline, have a greater capacity and lift that gas moratorium, that's the right thing to do. So I think you can be both pro-environment and pro-economy at the same time. Thank you.
David Carlucci, what are your thoughts? David Carlucci?
Yes, we have to move off of fossil fuels. Look, I was the author of the Green Amendment in New York State that would have a constitutional amendment to guarantee us the right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. What could be more important than that? We have to focus on that. That has to be the goal, and we have to move forward with it. Look, I worked through the obstacles of the Champaign Power Express line. It hops out of the Hudson River, runs through my district, and we had the not in my backyard issue. We worked together. It did take time, but we have that opportunity moving forward. we have to invest in renewable energy. And that's why I'm a supporter of the Green New Deal. That's why I was a co-sponsor of New York's version of a Green New Deal. This has to be the focus. And we need a federal resources and make it a federal priority to invest in renewable energy. And that's got to be Westchester County and Rockland County's future. I believe we can do it. We will do it. NRC has proven to be a disaster. They're woefully unprepared to decommission plants, particularly Indian Point. That's going to be a priority for me to get their ship in order so that we're not left with a legacy of environmental pollution.
Thank you, Mr. Carlucci. Let's hear now from Adam Schleifer.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. So a few things. One, we know that from the OIG report that there were serious missteps and failures with respect to the safety tolerances of Indian Point. I'm glad it's being decommissioned in an orderly and safe way. We need to keep looking at that and make sure nobody falls down on the job. We do need to replace some capacity as we go forward. One thing I've looked at already and spoken to leaders on is putting a wind farm on parts of that site. Why is that important? Because we also have to remember that the towns right around Indian Point are uniquely suffering the economic burden in a way for the benefit that's more diffuse that all of us gain from its orderly decommissioning. So what would be better than a green energy source of wind right on that site? I'm hoping we get that. I hope we work with hydroelectric capacity from the north and bring that down. And I think we need to look at solar too. And my view is we need a carbon tax of at least $40 or $50 a metric ton so that if there is fossil fuel production and natural gas, we force them to pay the full economic cost of what it is they're doing, internalize the externality, the business council folks understand what that means, and make sure we have a green future with the right incentives.
Mondaire Jones.
Yeah, a Green New Deal is my #1 legislative priority in the long term, because if we don't have a planet that we can inhabit, the other stuff that we've been talking about just doesn't matter. And so we have to make sure that as we safely and securely and hopefully rapidly decommission Indian Point by 2021, we are investing simultaneously in renewable sources of energy and specifically infrastructure. So yes, wind, but also solar and hydro. And we can do that in the Hudson, in the Long Island Sound. We can make sure that we are doing that. And these are going to be jobs creators, okay? They're going to create tens of thousands of jobs, good paying jobs if we do it the right way. And we can make sure that people who are being displaced from a decarbonizing economy right here in New York's 17th Congressional District get first dibs at getting those jobs. That is what fairness requires, in fact. So I view it as an opportunity. And I would like for us not to be encouraging continuing to use so-called transitional fuels. We have to make sure that we honor the fact that we only have 10 years left before irreparable damage to the planet if we don't act right now in a massive and unprecedented way.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Asha Castleberry-Hernandez.
Thank you. Yes, I worked at the Indian Point, so I understand the security there in terms of how high this risk is to have the existence of Indian Point. So I support definitely the closure of Indian Point. But I must say, as your legislator, I would definitely make sure we have a comprehensive closure plan, ensuring that we are doing it that includes the risk assessment as well as creating jobs, and also supporting the features of the Green New Deal. That is very important. But going back to the job situation, I must say to you that people in the local area are concerned with the closure, that it will get rid of most of the jobs there in terms of making sure employment is in place. So we have to make sure that we have enough funding in place so that people can secure jobs or create new jobs, focus on renewable energy, and make sure that the closure plan does not devastate the area. But we also, the highest priority is to make sure that we do close Indian Point. And this is why I'm so proud to say that I received my endorsement from the first U.S. ambassador to nuclear threat reduction, Bonnie Jenkins, who definitely supports my plan how we can do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison Fine. How confident are you that we'll have enough power?
Oh, I'm very confident. Riverkeepers has already put out a report saying that there is adequate renewable energy in our area to make up for that gas pipeline, which, by the way, is mainly being shipped overseas. The fact that a gas pipeline was allowed to be built right near a nuclear power plant on a fault line, the Ramapo fault line, is mind-boggling to me. We have got to pivot to a new economy. We have got to stop subsidizing fossil fuel companies and efforts. We have got to be bolder about saying the time is now to get to renewables and to recreate our energy future. However, for Indian Point, I'm not convinced that Holtec is the right contractor, and We have no plan of what to do with the spent fuel rods. There's no place to ship it. We can't possibly build
10
anything
seconds.
new on that site until we have a plan of what to do with all of that spent nuclear waste as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison Fine. Evelyn Farkas, you'll finish off question number 4.
Yeah, so the earth is on fire and melting. I have said all along that the #1 issue that I will address as a member of Congress is the climate crisis, because it is also a way to provide a stimulus and move us to a new green economy, create new jobs, and create new infrastructure. We will have enough renewable energy, because when I go to Congress and others go to Congress with like-minded attitudes, we're going to put in an infusion of money to move from fossil fuels to renewable energy. The other thing we know is that the second reactor was closed in April, and the sky didn't fall. There was actually a lot of conservation that was achieved over the last years or months. And so we can continue those conservation efforts, and that will help. I want to say a couple other things about Indian
10
Point.
seconds.
There is a plan for storing the spent fuel. It's actually in sight, and that because there's no repository at the national level. That means that the local government needs to be able to tax the federal government. That's one component of it. Also,
Thank you, Evelyn Farkas. Sorry, I have to cut you off so we can get all of our questions. We've got a lot of great questions today. We're going to move on to question 5. Do you support the movement towards a government-run healthcare system like Medicare for all? If so, can you provide some details of what you envision and how it will be paid for? If you do not support a government-run healthcare system, do you have any thoughts on changes to make the current system better? And we're going to begin with, back to you, Evelyn Farkas.
So I believe that access to affordable health care is a universal human right. And so everyone in this district should have access. And the 27 million Americans who don't have health care protection need it urgently. We need to create a public option. But no, I'm not in favor of abolishing the private health care system, which provides safety for so many people right now. I am proud to have served under President Obama. I've been endorsed by Dr. Zeke Emanuel, who was the architect of the Affordable Care Act. I believe that it was a good start, but we need to build it further into a fully funded federal public option that also gives the federal government the power to negotiate the price of pharmaceuticals, because for too long, pharmaceutical companies have been gouging Americans. They're taking money from the resource for research and development and then providing us with pharmaceuticals where they provide the prices. The American government doesn't have the power, like governments in other countries, to negotiate on behalf of the American people and to make health care more affordable. So that's in part what I would do.
Thank you. Adam Schleifer, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, we need to expand Obamacare and ensure that the 8.5% of people in this country who aren't covered are covered. Through that and through a public option, Medicare for those who want it. Let the two systems compete. I hope that the public option outcompetes the private system, but I don't think we should be in the business of dislocating and pulling the rug out from hardworking union members and others who have made significant collective bargaining gains and sacrifices in their career and like their current plans. Let's have the two systems compete, make sure everybody's covered, cap out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs, let the government negotiate more strongly with drug companies, and also go after the bad actors, those who drive up prices for insulin and for old antibiotics and for things that don't reflect any true innovation. We need to have an FTC and the DOJ that do that. So we need to have quality, affordable health care for everyone in this country in the 21st century. And that's the way I would do it. Let the two systems compete. I hope the public option wins out, but we got to make sure that it's in a competition where the public gets the benefit of both options.
Let's hear now from David Carlucci.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe healthcare has to be a human right. And that's why I support a Medicare option, to make sure that everyone that needs healthcare has access to it. As a state senator, I've dealt with thousands of cases of people being denied coverage that need access to care, whether it's mental health or physical health or substance abuse disorder. The list goes on and it has to stop. Look, we all have to pay a price, and either we pay it now or we'll be fit with a bill that we cannot afford. That's why we have to move forward today with building upon the Affordable Care Act, allowing a public option, taking on price gouging, allowing Medicare to negotiate the price of prescription drugs. That has to be an option, and that has to be on the table. The American taxpayer is being fleeced by prescription companies, by pharmaceutical companies. It has to end. As your member of Congress, I will make sure it ends. And this will be a top priority to make sure everyone has access to health care, because we're all paying for it in the end.
Mondaire Jones.
Yeah, it's easy to raise your voice and say that you support healthcare as a human right and then not support the only policy that would literally ensure everybody in this country, which is Medicare for all. So like Congresswoman Lowy, I'm a proud champion of that. I'm the only one in this race who supports it. And I want to push back on the premise of the question, because the fact is it would result in cost savings. Right now, we are estimated to be spending as a society $52 trillion over the next 10 years on this, and Medicare for all would actually save $5 trillion. 30 trillion of that would come from the federal government. The other approximately 22 trillion would come from out of pocket and from employers. And so Medicare for all would actually save employers money, incidentally, by eliminating the profit motive. Wages would go up because employers would no longer be spending so much money on health insurance. And of course, outcomes would be better. Coverage would be expanded to include vision, dental, long-term care,
10 seconds.
mental health services, as someone mentioned earlier. And we can do all of this while saving money and getting better outcomes and ensuring that literally everybody in this country has health care. It is much more than 30 million people.
Thank you. Thank you, Mondaire. We need to hear now from Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Yes, thank you. I also, I'm the only candidate that actually supports a pathway to Medicare for all, because I'm very realistic on how we can actually spend our money in terms of supporting Medicare for all. I do support that we need to invest in our public option. And then I'm also aware that we are right now at $22.3 trillion in debt. So as far as generating all that revenue to support a $12.3 trillion Medicare for all program, it's gonna take some time. And this is why I support changing the tax policy so we could generate more revenue, ending these endless wars so we could generate more revenue to cover this government option, and that can lead over the course of time to a Medicare for all. So we have to be very realistic when it comes to looking at the budget and how we can support this. And unfortunately, we will not have the revenue right in place to support Medicare for all, but we will in due time. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison Fine.
First, I just need to respond to Mondaire. I have been in two forums with you, particularly the Nyack Public Library, Mondaire, when you said Medicare for all begins with a public option. So all of the candidates here have started from that premise that we want to give people an opportunity to have access to healthcare. It is a human right, and it begins by opening up an opportunity to buy into a system, make it larger, allow the federal government to negotiate lower drug prices, and more importantly, something we haven't talked about, to allow the federal government to standardize and simplify the billing that's coming out of private insurance right now that is crazy making, and that allows for enormous inflation, as well as to negotiate lower drug prices. And we need to ensure that people have access to insurance that's decoupled from their jobs, because we've just seen what happens when millions of people lose their job and lose their health insurance as a result. Thank you.
Mondaire, would you like 30 seconds?
I would. Thanks very much. Let me explain that the Medicare for All legislation that Congresswoman Lowy signed on to and that Pramila Jayapal has authored, and I have her endorsement in this race, provides for a transitional period of 2 years. And it's not something that would happen overnight. However, it is Medicare for all. And none of you are willing to sign on to that legislation. And so I encourage you.
We're all talking about the same thing, Mondaire, and you have this self-righteous approach, like you're the only one talking about it.
Exactly.
The only person, well, she took out 15 seconds of my time. So let me just finish by explaining that I am the only person in this race who supports a single payer Medicare for all system, hard stop. That is verifiable. Go to my website, go to all the content from the beginning of this race, and ask anyone if they would be willing to sign on to Pramila Jayapal's legislation. The answer will be no for everyone else in this race.
I see a couple of you shaking your heads. You seem to have a passionate stance on this. So I want to go a little bit off script and see if any of you want to expand on what Allison or Mondaire said.
I do want to make sure I get my answer in at some point.
David, you're definitely going to get your minute. I saw Adam with your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, to make the record clear and to support Allison, who I have to say exhibits candor at all times. We don't always agree, but she's an honest person, and she's injecting a lot of honesty into this campaign, unlike a lot of other candidates. And what she's referring to is the fact that at multiple fora, after a poll was taken and he felt the political winds shift, Mondaire went from his Medicare for all back to the position that everyone here agrees with, which is a public option to compete and then get us to that place gradually. He then decided later to run in a different lane, reneged on that. We all have the recordings. We were all there because we've all been participating in the whole race. And now he's reinventing history. And I just want to commend Allison because it's not easy to stand up, but that's what she did. And she's honest and she's telling the truth.
Thank you.
Sarah, go ahead and respond.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to respond because there has been a lot of misinformation in this race. Your tax plan, for example, Adam, but specifically the video of my campaign ad from late October or early November says that we need Medicare for all. And the simple question to all of you is this: will you sign on to Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All legislation, which is a single payer system? And your answer will be no. And that's unfortunate. That is the dishonesty right now, where all of you are trying to be self-righteous in response to my effort to literally ensure everybody in our society in the midst of a global pandemic where over 40 million people have lost their health insurance over the span of 10 weeks. Please have some compassion for these people. And it's much higher than the 27 million people that Evelyn Farkas mentioned earlier. Before COVID, there were 30 million people uninsured. And
Look, if I could
underinsured.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, look, I want to support, and I'll sign on to the same legislation that Congresswoman Lowy has signed on to. I support that. I want to make sure that every person in this country has health care. That's the end of the story. I think what we're talking about is we have the goal of making sure everyone has health care. We're talking about different ways to achieve it. And I think what's important is we have to get there. And so the transition is what we're talking. I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist. I say that we need to get to healthcare. We want to make sure that everyone has access to it. And what we're debating about is how we get there. And I think we can't just sit on the sidelines and make statements. We have to make a difference. And that's what I'm focused on. So I support that. I like that idea of that option. But the idea that we're going to get there overnight is just not realistic. And I think that's what we're getting at.
Thank you, Senator Carlucci. Let's give Assemblyman David Buchwald his time.
Thank you. As a matter of sound economic and social policy, were I creating a healthcare system from scratch, I believe a single payer system would make the most sense. I believe we must work towards universal health coverage. The issue is, given where we are now, with millions of Americans having health care coverage that they don't want to give up, how do we get closer and closer to that aspiration? That's why I support a robust public option. And I do think that that is the practical way to move forward. One thing I'll point out, on the prior question, not a single other candidate addressed the Con Ed gas moratorium. I don't blame them, given their policy that effectively Con Ed and any other company should not have any ability to improve the situation. But I do think that you need a Congress member who's actually going to tackle one of the major economic issues facing our area. Thank you.
Thank you, David Buchwald. We're going to move on to question number 6, our last question before the lightning round. If elected, you'll be replacing not only a political legend here in New York, but a powerful voice in the nation's capital. Congresswoman Nita Lowey has represented our district for decades, rising to the ranks to claim one of the most respected positions in Washington as the first female chair of the House Appropriations Committee. Essentially, the question becomes, why do you feel that you have the political charisma and know how to fill her shoes? Also, what unique skill sets do you think you bring to the table that would garner the respect of House leadership? And we will begin with Adam Schleifer.
So one unique skill that I have in this field is, and it's one that we unfortunately need sorely right now, which is I've investigated and prosecuted and rooted out fraud and corruption and bullying. That's been my career as a consumer protection regulator for Governor Cuomo and as a federal prosecutor. I was a major frauds prosecutor, and I came from the same office as Adam Schiff did, doing similar work. And so if we need someone, and I think we sorely do, and it's unfortunate, to take on corruption and bullying and a threat to our constitutional system and federal government, I don't only talk about it, I've done it. It's my career, I'm an expert at it, and I will be prepared to do that. And I will also work in a creative and cohesive way with all of my colleagues, as I've done, to get real results for real people at state government, in the federal executive branch, where I was appointed under President Obama and served for more than 3.5 years as a federal prosecutor, and also and also when I worked in the judiciary. I have a background in constitutional law. I've taught that class. I have published scholarly articles on it. I know how the government works. I know how to get things done, and that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Schleifer. Let's hear now from Farkas.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an easy question for me. As I said, I served my government at the national level for 20 years between Congress and the executive branch. I have already drafted and passed legislation at the federal level for 7 years as a senior staffer in the Senate. I know the members of Congress, I know the senior staffers, I know the processes, I know where the money is, I know how to deliver for this district on day one. No questions asked. So what else? I've been endorsed by Secretary Kerry, by Secretary Panetta, by the former Chief of Staff to President Obama, by the former Chief of Staff to President Clinton, by 12 sitting members of Congress individually, not just by their caucuses, because I also have caucuses endorsing me, and I have Foreign Policy for America, Council for a Livable World, two organizations that know that you put diplomacy first, and they support people who put diplomacy first. These people who have endorsed me said, they believe that I am the closest thing you can get to Nita Lowey when you have to lose Nita Lowey. So I'm ready to serve. I'm a child of Hungarian refugees. I know what it means to need the government on your side.
Thank you, Evelyn Farkas. And now we'll hear from Allison Fine.
I have spent my career as a community leader here in Westchester and Rockland. I'm a past president of my synagogue. I'm the founder of the Network of Elected Women, 25 women here in Westchester elected to municipal offices, half of whom are women of color, to help support them in achieving their goals. I am a national leader. I became chair of the National Board of NARAL while we were watching the Kavanaugh hearings, and I helped to create the field of online activism. There is no blueprint for where we are right now and how we move forward. It is not business as usual, and we can't have people who have spent their careers inside government and as elected politicians leading the charge. I am an innovator. I'm an entrepreneur. I have led large national efforts. I've built communities, and I am running exactly as thousands of women have stood up and run since 2016 to say business as usual is not good enough. We need to be bolder. We need to be more aggressive. We need to be more aspirational. And that's the kind of leadership that I bring.
Let's hear what David Carlucci brings to the table.
Thank you. And yes, we are losing a trailblazer, a champion with Congresswoman Lowey's retirement. And that's why we need someone with the energy and the experience to pick up the ground running. I've put more legislation on the governor's desk than any lawmaker in the state last year. So I have the record to deliver results. I've worked on the federal level, working for Congressman Engel. I've worked at the local level, being the town clerk of the town of Clarkstown. So I know the ins and outs of local government, state government, and federal government. And look, I'm running to represent the people of Rockland and Westchester counties, not the interests of other lawmakers or special interests. A lot of my friends here that are joining the debate are new to the scene in Rockland and Westchester. They might have great credentials, but have never been in the fight. And it's easy to throw stones and a record like mine because I've been doing it for 10 years. I've been delivering results, been in the tough fights. I have a proven record of delivering, and that's what I'm going to do in Congress.
Thank you. David Buchwald.
Thank you. The people of the Lower Hudson Valley owe a debt of gratitude to Congresswoman Nita Lowey for her contributions and her fighting for all of us. The question asked about charisma, maybe I don't have the most charisma, but what I do have is a record as an actual legislator, getting things done, solving problems, enacting over 70 bills into law, and using the skill sets that I have as a physics major who worked in economics, then was a practicing tax lawyer, worked on transportation policy issues and others. With all respect, being a staffer on Capitol Hill is not the same as passing legislation. When you have to put your name to the legislation and be responsible to constituents and solve their problems, that is the real skill set that Nita Lowey has always been a champion of. She's been a fighter for us. Be very interested in the next answer from Mr. Jones, because he thought he was going to be better than Nita Lowey before she announced she was going to resign from running in this race. So I really appreciate the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You mentioned Evelyn, I'll get to you in just a moment. He mentioned Mondaire Jones. You're actually next on the list to speak anyway, so take it away, Mondaire.
Does that mean I get an extra 30 seconds for rebuttal? Look,
we'll negotiate it. Let's see how it goes.
For sure. I'll start by saying this. I don't have to hypothesize because entire congressional caucuses have endorsed this campaign, like the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the Congressional LGBTQ Equality Caucus. Hundreds of members of the House Democratic Caucus are members of these caucuses. I've also been endorsed by 3 former presidential candidates this cycle, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Julian Castro. And of course, the New York Times, in its endorsement of me on Friday night, called me the most promising and the most prepared. And so I think the question is awesome because it suggests that there's something more than simply possibly having served in elected office or have been on the Hill even for the past several decades. What skill sets do you bring beyond that? And I think charisma is, can you give a floor speech in an eloquent way that will be covered by the media environment? Can you go into communities and build a movement and be a transformational leader instead of one of 435 people? And I can do precisely that.
I was going to give you 10 more seconds, but hey, you wrapped up. Okay. Evelyn, you had your hand up.
Yeah, because I think that unfortunately, Mr. Buchwald doesn't understand how Congress works. That actually the senior staff do write the legislation. They do all the background work to get it passed. It's not like Albany. It's not like Westchester. So that's all I wanted to say. I mean, I think it's really important to be clear that it is a different world in Washington, a different skill set required, and the staff are actually writing the legislation and doing the work behind the scenes to pass it. So I can also go on about the fact that I also have a media background, 3 years as a national security contributor for MSNBC. Clearly, I can also give a floor speech.
Thank you, Evelyn. David, go ahead and respond before.
Yes, thank you. Look, I will put up the endorsements of George Latimer, the New York Daily News, over 80 local elected officials and organizations that have supported my candidacy. Go to davidbuchwaldforcongress.com, click on the endorsements. Those are people here in the district who know what it takes to fight for the people of Rockland and Westchester counties. In the end, they believe that I am best prepared because of my background and preparation, not just as a legislator, but in science and economics, as a tax attorney, fighting for people here in the area. Thank you.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez, you want to finish off our sixth question, please?
Yes, well, first and foremost, I believe I'm the best candidate because I have the most diverse experiences in this race. You know, when you watch where social injustices disproportionately impact people like me, I know what it feels like. Also, when you see that when a COVID-19 health crisis disproportionately impacts your community, I know what it feels like. So that makes me an effective legislator. But not only that, I have negotiating skills, working with the State Department. I've also executed foreign policy, national security in combat zones overseas. So I know when policy works, and I know when policy doesn't work. I've also taught Congress and foreign policy at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. So I know the players down in Washington, and I know how it works as far as that environment. And last but not least, I've also have a lot of endorsement terms from the local area as well as from the Obama alumni. But overall, I have my endorsement from God. I've been driven to run this seat not only because I come from a background of 400 years of being here, but not only that, we have served in every single war since the American Revolution. We also helped build this country. So it is in my desire to definitely run for this seat because at the end of the day, people like you bring so much to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to what is always my favorite part of any debate, the lightning round. Again, candidates, we're going to give you just 1 or 2 word answers to 12 questions here. First question is, who would you like to see Joe Biden choose as his running mate? Allison Fine.
A woman of color.
David Carlucci. David Carlucci.
I'm not sure at the moment. I don't know.
Marcus.
Any of the candidates that are under consideration right now.
Mondaire Jones.
A progressive woman.
Adam Schleifer.
Whoever's best equipped to team up with him loyally, effectively, and beat Donald Trump and get him out of office.
David Buchwald.
Most qualified woman available, absolutely.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
A woman of color.
Question number 2. What is your dream committee that you will ask Speaker Pelosi to assign you to? Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
House Committee on Infrastructure, as well as work on Veterans Affairs, as well as Foreign Affairs.
Allison Fine.
Commerce Committee to work on jobs and green energy.
Mondaire Jones.
Transportation and infrastructure to finally give Rocklanders the infrastructure that they desperately need in terms of a 1C train. And also
Adam Schleifer.
Ethics and commerce and energy.
David Buchwald.
As a tax lawyer, ways and means for sure.
Evelyn Farkas.
Called Energy and Commerce to work on Indian Point and also on energy infrastructure, which would include a train across our bridge.
David Carlucci.
Appropriations.
Question number 3, do you support term limits? David Buckwald.
No.
Evelyn Farkas.
No.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
No.
David.
Uh,
Oh, sorry, David Carlucci. 2 Davids here.
The way that it's structured, I don't. If we could have real campaign finance reform, it's something that I could support.
Mondaire Jones.
Yes.
Adam Schleifer.
No, but I support expanding the term to 4 years so people aren't running and seeking money the whole time and can actually govern.
Allison Fine.
No, and we desperately need campaign finance reform.
Thank you. Question 4, how many of the last 10 elections have you voted in? Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
4.
David Carlucci.
All of them.
Allison Fine.
All, and the question should be who has voted here, and that's me.
Evelyn Farkas.
All of them.
David Buckwald.
All of them here in White Plains.
Mondaire Jones.
All of them.
Adam Schleifer.
Many, and I'll point something out. I tried in 2014 to vote right here, and there was a problem with the ballot, which is why we need to get better at making sure that people, when they try to vote, they can actually get it done.
Fair enough. Question number 5, what is your top professional accomplishment? Again, please only 1 or 2 words for this one. David Buckwald.
Passing the bill to expose Donald Trump's tax returns.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Serve as a field grade officer. And by the way, 4 only because I served overseas in war. Thank you.
Allison Fine.
Writing the most influential book on social change and social justice in the 21st century, The Network Nonprofit.
Mondaire Jones.
There are several, but one of them was winning a multi-million-dollar case against Westchester County in September of 2018. It was regarding the North County Trailway, and it was a frivolous lawsuit, and I'm really happy we got that jury verdict within 12 minutes.
David Carlucci.
I would say Lauren's Law, because I know it's made a huge difference in New York State. It's been an example for other states to follow, and it's saved lives here in our community.
And for people who aren't familiar with Lauren's Law, I know because we've got a big special airing next week on the topic. It's all about the crisis shortage of organs in New York State, one of the worst places to be in the Western Hemisphere if you're waiting for an organ. So that was a very important piece of legislation. Adam Schleifer.
Thank you, Asha, for your service. For me, it is fighting for justice and saying every day in court, Adam Schleifer on behalf of the United States as a federal prosecutor.
Evelyn Farkas.
Being appointed by President Obama, our first African-American president, to serve in the Department of Defense, where I helped bring Montenegro into NATO.
Let's lighten things up a little bit, you guys. What's your hidden talent? Adam Schleifer.
4 years in a college a cappella singing group, I'm embarrassed to say.
Evelyn Farkas.
Oh my God, I don't know. I jumped out of a perfectly good plane once. I'm fearless, but you know, politically and otherwise.
That's perfect. David Carlucci.
I'm an avid runner.
Allison Fine.
Athlete of the year in high school. I throw a mean curveball.
Nice. Mondaire Jones.
I really like to tell jokes, and I think I'm really good at it.
David Buckwald.
I'm proud to say reading to my 5-year-old and 3-year-old. Thank you.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Thank you, Adam. I'm a flutist. I played in
Okay. All right, 6 more to go. What is the last book you read, David Carlucci?
The last book I read, I'm trying to think. The last one I really liked was Red and Blue. I think that's what it's called. It's about like the history of the 1990s and the political hyperpartisanship that's developed over the past couple decades.
Mondaire Jones.
We Were 8 Years in Power by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Evelyn Farkas.
The Fifth Risk, it's propping up my laptop right now.
David Buckwald.
Literally last night, I read a book called Tales. It's a touch and feel book about the different tales animals have.
Allison Fine.
I reread The Soul of a New Machine about automation.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
General Colin Powell's My American Journey, discussing about leadership.
Adam Schleifer.
More from Less by Andrew McAfee about the dematerialization of our economy and how we need to have a carbon tax to save the planet. The current one I'm working my way through is for my upcoming child being born, called The Happiest Baby.
Congratulations. Question number 8. Who is your political role model, Mondaire Jones?
Elizabeth Warren. She's so smart.
Buchwald,
Nita Lowey and George Latimer.
Adam Schleifer,
Congresswoman Lowy and Congressman Schiff.
David Carlucci,
Barack Obama.
Allison Fine,
Ann Richards.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez,
President Barack Obama.
Evelyn Farkas.
Barack Obama and Carl Levin, who opposed the Iraq War. I helped him oppose it and opposed tax havens.
What is your best character trait, Mondaire Jones?
Courage.
What is it? Courage?
Courage.
Schleifer,
Integrity.
Evelyn Farkas,
Empathy.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez,
Political courage and strength.
Allison Fine,
Humor.
David Carlucci,
I would say empathy.
David Buchwald.
Determination.
Lightning round question 10. We're getting there. Time flies when you're having fun. David Buchwald, your favorite restaurant?
La Boca here in White Plains.
I love La Boca too. Asha Castleberry Hernandez,
And cookies out in Haverstraw.
Allison Fine,
You know, you've just taken me by surprise because it's been so long since we've gone out. But I'll take
What's a
Harper's.
restaurant, right? What
Right?
is that?
I'll take Harper's in Dobbs Ferry, which has also done a wonderful job of distributing food to people.
Adam Schleifer, sorry.
Mount Kisco Diner, been going for 30 years.
Mondaire Jones,
It's an Ethiopian restaurant called Awash.
David Carlucci.
Vietnam Grill in Hillcrest. It's really good.
I'll have to try it. And Evelyn Farkas.
You know, I'm going to have to agree with Adam. And since I'm 52, I've been going way longer to the Mount Kisco Diner when it was a real old-fashioned Greek diner.
What's your favorite sports team, David Carlucci?
Yankees.
David Buchwald.
New York Mets. So we have a real disagreement, but I married a Yankees fan, so that's okay.
Evelyn.
I am agnostic, I confess.
Oh, Mondaire.
Yankees.
Adam.
Like David Buchwald, I'm a long-suffering Mets fan.
Asha.
I'm a long-suffering Knicks fan.
Allison Fine.
Let's go Mets. We're in
All
first
right,
place right
last
now.
question in the lightning round. Here it is, drum roll. If you were not running in this race, which of your fellow candidates would you support? Evelyn Farkas.
We're not running in this. I mean, I want the one with the most experience after me. So that one.
Who would that one be?
Who would my second choice be?
Isn't this a great last question for the debate?
Question.
Or you could take a pass if you want. We'll come back
I mean,
to Mondaire.
no, I know who it would be.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, we're not going to answer this question, Tara. You tried it at the debate.
Somebody who doesn't have
It was a
experience.
very
Hold
different
on.
Nobody's
question.
ever going to do it.
Somebody who doesn't have
Allison.
experience at the federal level, but has it at least at the state level. And
Allison,
has caucus with
yes,
their-
At the last News 12 debate, the question was, who was the least qualified to lead? This
Okay.
question we're asking if you weren't running, which is a very fair question, which of the candidates out of the 7 that are left would you support that are most philosophically and politically aligned with your values? So totally different beast. If you want to pass, that's fine. You're more than welcome to. Mondaire, the question's to you.
I want to pass because I don't think that's collegial to the other people who are running.
David Carlucci,
I'm going to pass.
Allison Fine,
Taking a pass, Tara.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez,
Anyone that can bridge both Westchester County and Rockland County together.
David Buchwald.
When you're elected official, you have to actually answer questions from constituents. So I will say Allison Fine.
Thank
Someone
you.
answered it. Thank you for answering the question, Assemblyman Buchwald. And we'll conclude with Adam Schleifer.
As Mondaire said, I have a couple ideas, but I don't think it's right to do that. As they say in the law, many of us are lawyers, expressio unius. I don't want to answer that one.
Fair enough. I have really appreciated but your candor and your honesty in this debate. I have known you all a long time and covered you even longer, and I learned something new about all of you today. So thank you so much for participating. I'm sure all of you who have watched this morning now have a better understanding as well about the candidates running in the race and their positions on the key issues impacting both Westchester and Rockland. So on behalf of my colleagues,
Closing statements.
we want to urge everyone to vote next Tuesday and remain safe as Westchester County continues to reemerge from the COVID crisis. Marcia, I'll turn it back over to you to close out this morning's program. A big congratulations to you and your team who planned and worked on this tirelessly for many weeks now. You all did a terrific job. Marcia. Do we have Marcia? There's Marcia.
Okay, and I'm muting. John, were we going to give closing statements or have we run out of time?
I think the beauty of virtual debates is that we can make our own time. So Tara, if you don't mind, I think we should give the candidates their 1 minute for closing statements.
Oh, sure. I had skipped that because I looked at the clock and saw we were out of time. But if you would like us to do that, absolutely. Let's do it.
If the candidates are willing to hang in there, I think we're all living in a new world. So let's break the rules. So, but I will keep the time for 1 minute closing statements.
Absolutely. So why don't I just go in order of who's on my screen? Evelyn Barkis, can you kick us off?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you to the organizers, to the Business Council, to News 12, Tara, Marcia, John. I am running to basically offer my experience, my 30 years professional experience, 20 years in the federal government, to help my community, my family, my district deliver on day one. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the judgment honed by that experience. And I want to just take a minute to say something about campaign finance reform, because there's one candidate who has poured over $4 million into this race. When we entered this race, it wasn't supposed to be more than about $1 million per candidate. $4 million, one candidate. That candidate has spent more than all of us combined, using their money that they inherited from the pharmaceutical industry. And they have not agreed to divest their 25 to 50 $50 million of stocks in the pharmaceutical company before they go to Congress or when they go to Congress and vote to try to cut down the costs of healthcare. One of them know is the price of pharmaceuticals. So I'm concerned about the big money sloshing around in this election, and I have to speak out about it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Adam Schleifer.
Tara, do I get a little extra time to respond to that brazen attack?
Go for it.
Thank you. So I'll just say something in the Business Council of
But
Westchester.
I didn't use a name.
Evelyn, that's because, as always, you're acting as though you're a snake. You have more corporate sponsors than a PGA golf tournament. Your single largest contributor is a Republican PAC whose other contributions go only to helping McCarthy and the Republicans in Congress maintain their majority. Everything you say is dishonest and it's a canard. You have $100,000 in super PAC money that you've brought into this race, not only to support yourself, but only to attack me. Let the voters decide who has the experience. You've made it evident from using your closing as you did that all you know is the fog of the Beltway. You talk about being a staffer. You've been in the back rooms of Congress for so long that you can't see straight. What I've done is do for real people in New York State for Governor Cuomo and for the Justice Department of this United States, bringing real people in communities the help and services they need. If we want a back-ridden, beholden person who lies, support Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn, these are meant to be closing arguments, but yes, take it.
Pretty urgently.
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I've raised more than anyone else in this campaign. I have 83% of my funds are small dollar. I have the largest number of small dollar contributors. The PAC money that Adam's referring to is Emily's List. I'm proud to have received financial support from Emily's List, the preeminent organization working for 40 years to tirelessly put women into political office. I do not have defense PACs and defense ties. These are real allegations. The PACs that support me, Council for the Livable World, Americans for Foreign Policy.
Evelyn, again, I'm sorry.
The majority of my money is not coming.
Evelyn, I apologize. We're so very heavy. I need to move on to Allison Fine.
I want to thank the Business Council for organizing this important forum today. I came into this race to fight to rebuild the middle class. Every worker deserves the right to have full benefits that stay with them instead of staying with the job. We need women to have full equal rights, and Evelyn, I've never seen you work in the field in feminism or in the field of reproductive freedom. I have spent years on the ground in communities fighting for women. And we need somebody in Congress who understands the future of technology, particularly the future of automation and jobs and workforce development. Our people are in pain right now. People are sick. People are unemployed. People are afraid. We need people from the outside with the leadership skills to move us to the next chapter
10 seconds.
of history. Thank you.
Evelyn, take just 10, 15 seconds.
Sorry, my fault.
Okay.
Well, I can just say Emily's List has endorsed me. They clearly believe that I'm the candidate who can win this race. I'm the woman who can win this race. We only have about 23% of women as representatives in the House of Representatives, and they would like to increase that number.
Thank you. Asha Castleberry Hernandez.
Well, you know, I mentioned you before. I have the most diverse experiences, you know, from state, you know, as well as what federal and international experience working with the government. But unfortunately, because I'm a representation of the working class, I didn't have the privilege like Evelyn to get so much money, especially from the outside the district, to be able to support my campaign. But I'm proud of my contributions because it comes from the working class, the same people that were disproportionately hit from COVID, same people that were disproportionately hit from the social injustices that just flared up recently. And by the way, that has also hurt the process of allowing more women that look like me to serve in Congress. But time will tell next week. But as mentioned before, I had the leadership and experiences. I'm the only one that has global legislation experiences. We need
10
that.
seconds.
And I know how to work with people in Washington, D.C. So again, please support my candidacy. Thank you.
Senator Carlucci.
Well, thank you to the Business Council and to everyone that's participated, to all the candidates. Tara, thank you for moderating. And look, I'm running for Congress not to make a statement, but to make a difference. That's what I've done in the state capitol with delivering more legislation than any lawmaker in the state of New York, getting real results for the people I serve. I've done that in Albany. I've done it in Clarkstown, squeezing water from a rock and making government more accessible and transparent to the residents that demand it and need it. And that's why I want to go and fulfill the legacy of Congresswoman Lowy. She has fought so hard for our community, and we need to continue that legacy. I'm a persistent fighter who always gets the job done, and that's what I look forward to doing. Please visit my website, davidcarlucci.com. Give me a call, send me an email. I look forward to partnering with all of you to make our community a better place, a more affordable place, and a place that we can call our home and raise our families. So thank you so much for having me, and look forward to seeing all of you in person, hopefully very soon. Thank you.
Assemblyman Buckwald.
Thank you to the Business Council of Westchester for hosting today's forum, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. Many of you are watching, trying to decide whom to vote for in the upcoming primary. Ask yourself, whom do you want doing the hard work of legislating day in and day out and helping constituents? Who has the experience to solve problems and deliver? I'm running for Congress because I believe it's my background in science, economics, government, and tax law that has prepared me to take on this role. I'm the serious legislator in this race, the true blue Democrat who gets things done. At a time when the road to recovery for our economy will be long and difficult, we need someone in Washington who isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves and dig into problems. I've written over 70 bills that have become law and fought for my constituents on issues big and small. This is no time for on-the-job training. This is time for a tested leader who will deliver.
10 seconds.
Your choice in this race will help determine the future of this district. Today is the last day to request your absentee ballot, and early voting is now underway. When you cast your ballot, I ask you to vote for David Buckwald, the Democrat who gets things done. Thank you.
And we will conclude with Mondaire Jones.
I'm really proud to have had some of the best educational experiences across the diaspora of the United States of America. And to have worked in the Obama administration, to have been the founder of a successful nonprofit, and to more recently have been litigating and winning some of Westchester County's biggest cases. But I gotta tell you, I'm most proud of the fact that I'm running for Congress because for me, policy is personal. Folks like me aren't supposed to run for Congress historically. And in fact, there's never been, incidentally, an openly gay Black member of Congress in the approximately 244-year history of the United States. But I'm running because I know that this economy has never worked for everyone. It has only ever worked for a subset of the American people, and the same is true of the government of the United States of America. And so while my opponents talk about Russia and prosecuting Donald Trump, I am the person who recognizes that even before Donald Trump was elected, people were hurting. And that's why folks from all across the spectrum in Washington and locally in Westchester and in Rockland counties, and indeed the New York Times, have endorsed my campaign because they know I can provide the leadership required to be successful for these times.
Thank you, Monty. Did everyone have the opportunity to speak? I had switched up the order there at the end. I want to make sure I didn't leave anyone out.
You got everybody, Tara. Great job.
Right, we did it. Thanks everyone so much again for your participation. The strange new world we live in doing this over Zoom. The first for me, but I'm sure not the last, will be doing something like this. And Marcia, John, Amanda, you guys have just been phenomenal. Your dedication to this effort was really extraordinary. Great to partner with all of you.
Tara, you did an amazing job. Thank you so very much. John, I know you wanted a few words before I close it out, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marcia. And again, thank you to Tara for doing a great job moderating this, and thank you to the 7 candidates. I've been in the political arena for over 30 years. I have to say, even in these unusual times, this was probably one of the most informative debates that I've seen. So we appreciate your commitment and your dedication for public service, and good luck to all of you over these next 7 days. For those of BCW members, our next political leadership series will be next Tuesday at 11 a.m. We will have Pat Foy, the president of the MTA, and Kathy Rinaldi, the president of Metro North, talk about the plans that they have as Westchester employees and employers get back to work using their system. So again, you look for that invitation to register, and I will turn it back over to Marcia.
John, thank you so much for your leadership, leading the BCW in all of our legislative efforts. Tara, you truly did an incredible job moderating this important debate, and all of the candidates, thank you so much for your hard work. And you know, please tune in all of the time to Tara on News 12, as I do. On behalf of our board of directors, special shout out to George Lentz, our Vice President of Governmental Affairs of our board, and Heidi Davidson, Galvanize Worldwide, who is the chairman of our board. We thank you. By the way, George is with Nicholas and Lentz. Don't want to leave that out. We thank you so much for your leadership. Most of all, I hope everyone who is eligible to vote next Tuesday will do so either by absentee ballot before or on Tuesday. If you need information regarding your poll site, please contact the Westchester County Board of Elections at westchestergov.com. Enjoy the rest of your day, and most important, be well and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.